this is Melissa Cleveland. I'm the Community Development Director with the City of Hayden, and we are putting this video together as an overview presentation of our draft 2040 Comprehensive Plan. I also have with me today Rachel Granrath from SCJ, and she has been the consultant for this project.
Hi everyone, very excited to be here and talk to you about the 2040 Imagine Hayden Comprehensive Plan update. So we'll start today with an overview and purpose and give everyone the framework of why we're doing this comprehensive plan updates, and Melissa's going to get into some of the reasons why and why we're here and where we're going.
So our current comprehensive plan was last updated in 2008, and it's probably obvious to most that the environment has changed since then, and is anticipated to continue to change within Kootenai County and the growth we're anticipating. And so we felt that it was necessary to update that comprehensive plan so that we were ready for whatever might get thrown at us. This plan is it's general enough so that it can last for many years. It's comprehensive. It covers all sorts of sectors within the city. It's also long range. This plan right now is planned to look through the year 2040. It's a document that's supposed to be updated and kind of living as we go throughout the years. And it's important to note that it's not a zoning ordinance. It's a guide for the city to use as we develop. The comprehensive plan is also a requirement in Idaho State Code, and our plan is organized and has all of the elements that are required in that code. Do you have anything to add, Rachel?
No, that's great. The next slide will actually get into some of the components. As Melissa mentioned, there are requirements from Idaho State Code for comprehensive plan updates. And what we've done here is organize Hayden's comprehensive plan into different chapters that address all of these required components and elements. Our chapter 1 is an introduction and vision. So that goes into the purpose of the comprehensive plan, as Melissa has just given an overview on, and also addresses our public outreach overview and the vision that was determined by the community and by community outreach, which we will get into. The second chapter is policy framework. We'll give you an overview of that today in our presentation and conversation, talking about the goals, policy, and ultimately actions for Hayden to take as we move towards 2040. Chapter 3 is a demographics overview, which talks about some of the historical trends and projected trends. This is talking about what your population growth is looking like. It's talking about your demographics of people, whether that's race, gender, different age groups, and demographic studies such as that. Chapter 4 is land use. That goes over what existing land use is, what your future land use is, areas of interest, areas of impact or annexation, again, which we'll get into later in this presentation. Chapter 5 addresses housing. We'll get into that as well, which is tied directly to land use and your projected uses for properties in areas within the city. Chapter 6 is an overview of natural resources and hazardous areas. Those are areas where you talk about flooding or steep slopes, risk for wildfires, and what the city is looking to do as it moves forward to 2040. Chapter 7 is transportation. Again, this is part of a 4-plan series that's updating, so this will relate to your transportation plan as well. Chapter 8 is economic development, so we'll talk about different elements and avenues for looking forward to the future and developing Hayden, whether it's commercially, industrially, or kind of that mom and pop shop. Chapter 9, it deals with parks and recreation, which is tied to the parks plan as well. Chapter 10 deals with local services, which will relate to the sewer plan, which I know is going to be adopted later this year as well. And then 11 is community design, which looks at what the community wants to look like, art, historic preservation, street designs, wayfinding, things like that all tie into where a city will go. And then we have appendix documents A through D. Appendix document A is dealing with actions. So the reason why this is in the appendix document is so the city can update it annually without having to go through a comprehensive plan amendment each time. So it allows for, as new information comes and as new work plans and budgets are achieved, you can update and re-envision those actions as long as they are consistent with the goals and policies that are outlined in the comprehensive plan. Any questions or anything to add, Melissa, on that one?
No, I think you covered it.
Fantastic.
Okay, so people are probably wondering, how do we use the comprehensive plan? And it's really a guide for all land use decisions. Anything that has to do with a zone change or a text amendment in our code, especially special or conditional use permits, and then also long-term planning, because it does have goals and policies that address housing, transportation, parks, and all sorts of other municipal services. It helps to guide those updates as we go. And I think that's about it. I think you mentioned earlier that we also use the actions, which are in the appendix, in our budgeting, our annual budgeting, and kind of figuring out our priorities for our capital improvement plans for the city.
That's great. And I think we have a slide on that, Melissa, so we'll dive a little deeper into it. So now we're going to get into some outreach and vision. Again, this is an overview of some of the changes and actions that were done as part of this planning outreach. And Melissa's going to give an overview of what we've done so far.
Right. So we started this process last spring, a year ago, and in the summer of 2019, we had what we called orientation interviews with local leaders that represented all different types of the community. So people who were involved in economic development, emergency services, healthcare, schools, the airport, recreation, and also development and real estate. And so we asked them a lot of questions and had pretty good conversations so that we could get a feel for kind of the sense of Hayden, the vision, where people were seeing things going, and where people wanted things to go. Then in October, November, we did polling questions on social media on our Facebook page. And those gathered quite a bit of comments and different kinds of interactive information. And then we used the orientation interview and the polling questions to prepare for the community festival that we had at Atlas Elementary in November 2019. That was really well attended. We were really happy with that. And like Rachel had mentioned before, the community festival was for the whole Imagine Hayden project, which is updating the comprehensive plan, but also the transportation plan, parks plan, and the sewer collection master plan. And then in December of last year, we put out a community survey that many people in the community filled out and returned, and that helped to guide a lot of the elements of the comprehensive plan.
Awesome, Melissa. That's a great overview. As everyone is probably seeing, there was a lot of opportunity and interesting ways that we did outreach, and this was all pre-COVID. So, you know, which did lead into what Hayden's vision was drafted as, and this is in the comprehensive plan, and this is directly related to what we heard from you as residents, as stakeholders, as business owners, as you know, people within the community of Hayden. I won't read this all out loud, but ultimately what Hayden's looking for is a regionally connected area with that has a small town feel, that has, you know, strong systems in place, such as top tier schools and roadway systems, and managing traffic and dealing with great spaces and open space and parks, encouraging small business culture, healthy and connected families. And I think that really has been a guiding force for this comprehensive plan update, and guided a lot of decisions, goals, policies, and actions that you're going to see following. Anything to add, Melissa?
No, that's great.
Great. So now we're going to get into some of the policy framework, just a natural transition from the vision of what are we doing with this. Goals and policies are located in Chapter 2, as we did the overview just a few minutes ago. What we've done is, instead of pages and pages of goals that relate to different policies, we've created a spreadsheet that deal with specific elements of the comprehensive plan. So these are tied to either unique aspects of Hayden or required elements from Idaho State Code. And these abbreviations are used through the action table so that, let's say, a developer or a property owner or the city is reviewing a land use application, they can easily look and see, oh, does this meet our land use code? Does this meet our natural resources elements of the comprehensive plan? And tied to goals and policies specifically, as some sort of decision is reviewed in accordance with the comprehensive plan. So again, these goals and policies are cross-referenced. They all relate to each other. And ultimately, these goals and policies are looking to direct actions. And actions are broken down into different elements of your comprehensive plan. Again, this is an Appendix A, so that the city can update annually. And as Melissa mentioned earlier in our presentation, the ultimate goal here is to have this inform your work plans, to have this comprehensive plan be living and tied to what the city is continuing to do through annual budgets, through CIPs, through priority funds and projects, whether those are transportation improvements or sewer improvements, streetscape improvements, or whatever. So that ultimately the public input that was done through this comprehensive planning update direct your priorities as a city. And you can update them annually. What the city can choose to do here is use these as project process indicators and annual updates to say, hey, city council, hey, community, here's what we've done. Here's our success measures in accordance with what the outreach has done for your comprehensive plan. And Melissa, I don't know if you have anything to add here.
No, I don't. I think it's important to note that the 2008 comprehensive plan was set up a little bit differently, and it had goals and policies for each of the required elements, which made it very lengthy and kind of cumbersome. So we have, like you said, we've changed that so that one goal can apply to several different elements of the plan. It helped to simplify things.
Fantastic. That's a great point. Trying to streamline it and make it easier for everyone to use. So with that, I know it's a burning question on everyone's mind is growth and demographics. Huh, Melissa? Is this one of the topics we've heard?
Right. I don't think it'll be a surprise.
No. So we're going to quickly kind of go over some of these. I know everyone's probably pretty familiar, but Hayden is growing. How about that? So in the top right corner here is the projections for Cooney County and Hayden. And as you can see, by 2040, you're nearly over doubling your population as projected by KMPO. So we sit at about 15,000 and are projected to be about 34,000. Melissa, do you want to go over this great map that's part of the transportation plan?
Right. So for both the transportation plan and the sewer master plan, we did quite a bit of modeling on where on where growth would occur and how that would impact those the transportation and sewer systems. So we pulled this graphic out of the transportation plan because it shows where we're anticipating growth. The darker the color, the more purple the color, is the higher areas where we're anticipating higher growth. So I think what I want people to understand is those light blue colors, and a lot of times are already developed areas. So we're not anticipating a lot of growth in those already developed areas, but more out north of Lancaster in that Hayden Canyon region, and then out towards what used to be our planning boundary, which is out towards Hutter. Now we've extended our planning boundary west to Meyer, but we are seeing a lot of interest in development out towards Hutter, and that's where we're mostly anticipating growth.
Yeah, and that's awesome, Melissa. I think what we'll get into as we look at some of the land use maps too is the fact that single family areas are going to remain single family areas. Growth is facing Hayden, but growth is going to happen in very specific areas.
Yep.
So getting into how is the city addressing growth through our policies and through the planning efforts that are here today. I'll turn that over.
Right. Did you want me to take this or?
Yeah.
Okay. So we understand from our public outreach that people in the community, they understand that growth is happening and that growth will occur. But there was a sense of really wanting to maintain the character of what makes Hayden such a special place to live in. And so we have policies in this comprehensive plan to help with that. To maintain the integrity and character of neighborhoods. We totally recognize that transportation improvements are needed both today and as we grow, so we're focusing on that. And then we'll get into housing later, but we're recognizing that with the housing market, the environment we're in for housing, that we have to make a change in Hayden to allow for different demographics to have a variety of options for them. And then also this has always been and will continue to be a priority for the citizens of Hayden to maintain open space. I mean, that's part of the reason people live here. And then we also recognize that with development, we have, like we mentioned earlier, the transportation systems, the water systems, the sewer systems, they all need to keep up with this growth. It has to be managed appropriately.
Awesome. Well, now we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of land use and how we're dealing with specifically growth and economic development and housing issues. So here we're going to go over what the biggest land use changes are. What are we changing as part of these comprehensive plan updates? So there's kind of two parts here. The image that you're seeing in the map is our future land use map, and this talks about what the city of Hayden is looking forward to seeing develop in the future. This is not changing your zoning. This is not going in and changing specific parcels. This is allowing for that future use.
Right.
So we have updated 2 different areas that will ultimately amend your code at some point, but this doesn't amend your code. This allows for that. So these 2 new zones that we've identified are mixed use, which is commercial and residential uses, and then mixed residential. And the mixed residential allows for different types of residential housing. So this is above and beyond your typical single family. Not to say that that means high density apartment.
Right, it's still not that. Right, it's still not what you would consider traditional multifamily, but we are thinking that we'll allow multifamily in that mixed use zone, and that is on the map. The mixed use is kind of that purple or maybe magenta type color, and that is centered around the major transportation corridors, because we recognize that higher density housing, the multifamily, and those commercial centers, they really need to be on those transportation systems. And the orange, it's kind of, sometimes it looks orange and sometimes it looks kind of beige. That's where we're thinking that mixed residential, which will allow for that variety in housing types.
Right. And again, this isn't your first bite at these changes. This is just setting the stage for what that vision is for future land use.
Right.
Melissa and her team are going to go through a code amendment process that will get into the very specific elements of what that code looks like. So, you know, for example, in the mixed residential zone, what types of multifamily housing is allowed by permitted use versus conditional use? That will all be hashed out at a later date.
Right. It will.
So, and then another really great part of this planning effort is we've identified neighborhood nodes, and these do relate to the future land uses map that we just had on the screen. But ultimately here, what we're doing is showing that street intersections that have either the potential for small businesses serving a neighborhood or could grow into an intersection where there's a mixture of businesses and uses that support a neighborhood can be developed. And those are the blue stars that you see across this map, and also highlighted that central business district in that core of Hayden along Government Way. So ultimately, these do require a special and conditional use permits. Again, this will be looked at through that code update process that will follow this comprehensive plan update. But ultimately, the vision here is we want to establish some more mom and pop stores, for have kids to be able to bike from their neighborhood to get a snack or an ice cream. We've heard that a lot from people, is that they want that like livability and walkability and shop where they live and play where they live.
Right.
Do you want to add anything there, Melissa?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Great. Well, now we're moving on to housing and economic development, which is, again, is a natural progression from setting the stage on what those future land uses are, where these areas of nodes and development and pocket areas are, and really get into a couple different things. Melissa got into an overview of what this housing looks like and why we've amended this comprehensive plan for these residential zones, the mixed residential and the mixed use. It does stem from growth. It stems from affordability. The median housing price has increased quite a bit over the nearly last decade. Median rents increased, and this is happening everywhere. It's happening in Hayden, but it's happening a lot of places too. And you know, you only have a 3% vacancy in Hayden, which is very low. It means that at any time you have a vacant building, it's turning over quickly. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that everyone who lives in Hayden or wants to live in Hayden can find somewhere suitable. We want to maintain the workforce that has lived here historically. We want to maintain long-term residents who have bought in and now can't afford a home in Hayden. We want to make sure that people who live here and want their children to move back or want to age in place have options. And so ultimately what we're proposing as part of this plan is to address that missing middle. And the missing middle image before you is showing the diversity of single family homes, which has been traditional in Hayden, and then that mid-rise apartment complex that a lot of folks don't love as much, and that are polar opposites of the scale. So we want to make sure that we allow for diversity of uses, whether those are duplexes or courtyard apartments or, you know, townhomes, and make sure that the scale is appropriate to Hayden. So I don't know if you have anything to add there, Melissa.
I don't really. We just, yeah, that whole missing middle it's not non-existent in Hayden, but there's sure not much of it. And that's what we are envisioning for that mixed residential zone that we're looking at.
And then just a quick overview. We talked about the live work area. This is a graphic from the census that shows the inflow and outflow of people who the jobs in Hayden. So you have a substantial amount of people who do not live in Hayden that are coming into Hayden, and then vice versa, that people who live in Hayden are working elsewhere. And so what we're trying to do as part of this plan is to foster development and jobs and opportunities for people to live and work in Hayden. So
right,
historically,
and that we've noticed that because we're not really serving the, really either of the people who live here have few opportunities to work, and the people who work here tend to live elsewhere. That also stresses our transportation system, because we have all these people driving to get to work or driving to get home, and it sure would be better for our transportation system if people could live and work both in Hayden.
That's great. And then, subsequently, we're trying to capture that group of people and ease some of the systems, which feeds into economic development. What are we doing about it? Here's our current industries in the image to the right. This is what Hayden currently has as its economic force. What we are looking to do as part of this comprehensive plan update is to build upon our current industrial uses and development, foster that development and business community in Hayden. We want to continue to capitalize on our local workforce and make sure that people have a place to work within the city boundaries. Foster small business development, and that's that mom and pop, and translates into the node development of how are we going to create neighborhood developments and kind of these smaller, more localized businesses. And then also focusing again on the central business district. We didn't highlight that ton in this presentation because that has been established as part of the comprehensive plan and city directive already, but it is still very important to foster development and economic revitalization in the central business district. All right. So with that, in the interest of time and making sure folks are still interested as we talk, we'll give you an overview, and I'll turn it over to Melissa on what we're doing next.
So our plan is to have this draft document out. It's been out since last week when we posted it, and to gather questions as people review the document. If they have questions, please reach out. You can email. We've set up a separate email for this Imagine Hayden process. So it's Imagine Hayden at cityofhaydenid.us. You can email questions there. We'll respond. We also have a frequently asked questions sheet that's available on the website. And as we get great questions from the public, we will update that frequently asked questions sheet so that everyone can learn from whatever questions someone asked. So the full plan is located on the City of Hayden website. There's an Imagine Hayden page. You can see the website there on the slide. And we'll post this video there as well. Our goal is to have a public hearing with Planning and Zoning on October 5th. And then also the other 3 plans are going to get rolled out here in the next couple of weeks. Those will also go through the same kind of public involvement period. And then we're planning on having a hearing with City Council in November to adopt all of the plans. So we really need people to get us your questions, be involved at this point. It's a little unfortunate with COVID that we can't have our traditional open houses, but we don't want that to deter people from reaching out and getting your questions answered and being heard.
That's great. That's great, Melissa. And I mean, ultimately, this is a plan by the community and for the community. community. So give us your thoughts, what it's for, and you know, I think a lot of the input we've heard has driven this plan. So let's bring it out strong.
Yes, for sure.
But thank you all.